Hi everyone. Back again for a second round today, answering questions because I got quite a few questions to answer, so I might as well keep going. This question was asked by Jose, Washington D.C., and Jose asks, something I always wanted to ask is how do you determine which already pressed cakes, in parentheses, other companies' productions, are things that you want to sell in your store? I feel like picking Mao Cha would be easier because you are picking the raw material that you will compose your cakes with. But when buying cakes that are made by other companies, do you take samples or do you take the cake is sample approach? Does the leaf grade affect your decision at all, or do you go purely by taste? Okay, well, quite a few questions in here. Let's see. Well, I typically go by taste. Obviously, excuse me, with a lot of different tea factories, a lot of them have their own style, like Xiaoguan or Monghai or Nanjing or some of the other ones. A lot of them have some similar style. So even before you drink them, you kind of know what you're getting into, at least in terms of some of the bigger names like Xiaoguan and Monghai and Mengku and things like that. Yes, I do get whole cakes. I get a whole cake, and before I crack into it, I'll take some pictures of it, just in case. Because then, if I do decide that I want to sell it, I will already have the pictures. So, it's a nice way for me to get to know, feel the cake, hold it in my hands, look at it, and then when I drink it, that's kind of when I make my decision. I don't really care so much about whether it's tippy, if there's a bunch of silver tips pressed on it, or if it's a ripe pour, which grade it is. What's really important for me is the overall taste. Of course, not to say that the grade of leaf used to produce the cake doesn't affect the outcome of how the cake tastes, but again, I just go more by how it tastes. I don't really care, if it's super tippy or not. Although there are, although super tippy cakes have their own kind of unique taste. So, anyways, let's see. Let me go back to your question here because I forgot the second half. You say, I feel like picking Mao Cha would be easier because you are picking the raw material that compose your cakes. That's not really the case because Mao Cha is kind of especially when we get it, when I'm drinking it. I mean, if I go down to the where it's grown, or even if I get it sent to me, I usually end up drinking it within a few days of when it was picked and processed, if not the day after. So when Mao Cha is in that super young state, it's very green. It can brew up a little bit cloudy sometimes, and what we call cao qing wei, which is basically like a green grass flavor. Young Mao Cha has that green grass flavor, which completely dissipates over the coming months, and really in the first month or two, it really drops off fast. So when you get that fresh Mao Cha, been drinking a lot of that recently. It's actually not really easy to tell. You can tell if it's been processed correctly, but if it's, let's say, a tea from an area that you're not, particularly familiar with, then you drink it, and it's definitely not. I wouldn't say that it's easy to tell. In fact, it changes dramatically in the first few months. So I have obviously gained a lot of experience because every harvest season I go through literally hundreds of Mao Cha samples, and what I really try to do is I try to eliminate the ones that are obviously no good. So, maybe a lot of little burnt pieces in the leaf, super cloudy, yellow type, a very yellow or orangish tea soup is definitely not a good indication for its future aging potential. Obviously, any kind of off tastes. I look at the leaf. I look at the structure of the leaf. I look at is the leaf stout? How um, how dark is the leaf? I really like to see leaves that are kind of more like dark olive color, as opposed to like a light green yellow color, which that light green yellow color tends to indicate, and in addition to its scale, how burly and thick and stout it is. If it's little tiny leaves and green yellow, then you're looking at plantation tea, and often very young plantation tea, which I typically avoid. Um, there are a lot of big tea factories that blend with plantation tea, and the results are good, especially with aging. And that's kind of my thing is I create my cakes from tea that I like, and I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. These other tea factories are doing something, and they've been doing it, and I respect their tradition. So, you know, um, again, I think I'm going off on a tangent here, but Mao in fact, when it's very young, can be very difficult because if you were to drink a Mao that was harvested 2 days ago, um, and compare that same tea to a tea that's 1 year old, that same tea 1 year old or 2 years old, it's going to be dramatically different. So that's definitely something that takes a lot of experience. And again, it's placing yourself at the source every harvest season. And you're really trying to compare the tea to what it tasted like last year. I'll get tea from the same grower. For example, autumn 2014 harvested tea, and then I'll drink the same tea in 2015 autumn. But even if I keep a sample of that autumn 2014 Mao Cha to drink and compare, it's going to have changed. It's a year older, so it's not going to taste like it. So um, it's really something that is very difficult to just you can't keep a record of it. I mean, you can kind of keep a mental record, or you could make some notes, but ultimately it's about deciding which at the time during the season which ones are the best ones, and comparing them with each other, and removing all of the ones that obviously have problems, and then kind of gradually just whittling that down to anywhere from 5 to 10 different choices. So that's kind of how I go about it. Hopefully I answered your question. I'll go back and I'll look at your question again, and maybe I'll make another video for that if I didn't answer it all. But yeah, thanks, Jose, and appreciate participating in our Q&A series. And for anybody else who wants to send me a question, please do. I might take a few days to get to it, but you can send me a question, preferably to my email, scott@yunnansourcing.com. Send them on over, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Thanks.